To the Draketown Church family, I know it feels like it's been forever since we've worshiped together. But in the last 2 months, I know that God is still working in our lives, even though we haven't been able to worship as a complete church body. I want you to know that the deacons, deaconesses, and the church board have been in discussion about a plan for going forward. At this point in time, it is simply a discussion. We don't know the answer, but know that we are prayerfully considering what is best to be able to function as a church, for people to be healthy and safe, and for us to be able to witness for God's kingdom during this difficult time. Join us in praying for God's will to be apparent and real. We'll have more information as it's revealed to us and as we have peace about what God is leading us to do in the coming weeks and months. If you have any questions, feel free to contact any board member, any deacon or deaconess, or you can contact myself. It may have started just a couple of weeks ago, or months, or years, or even decades ago. Perhaps it started on a fishing dock many years back. Or perhaps one of the dozen or so shipwrecks in this area. It may even have been in a bygone era when it was okay to dump trash in the lake. Busted up bottles, broken windows, old windshields, glass of all forms and kinds, colors, shapes, sizes. Glass is a common enough thing. We touch it and see it many times every single day. And let's face it, it's so common that after a while we don't even realize the glass that exists around us in our world. When glass breaks, it loses its value, whatever it's been used for, whether it's a glass to hold water or a window to keep the cold or heat in or out. Whether it's a bottle that holds a cold beverage, or an aquarium that holds fish. Regardless of how glass got into the water, it's now that the water takes over. It moves the glass around. The sand and the rocks break the glass apart. The constant tumbling action of the waves and the sand and the water cause the glass to become polished. The edges that are ragged become smooth and glossy. And that's why I'm out here today. I'm out here after beach glass. The amazing thing is that something as seemingly worthless as broken glass can have great value. But there's a process it has to go through, sometimes very long and enduring, for it to become polished and beautiful. And we as human beings are a lot like that too. I don't know about you, but at times in my life I felt kind of worthless, as though the sin in my life defines me as who I am. The things that I've done in the past, can they actually be forgiven? And Satan continually reminds us that, remember what you did? You really think God's that loving and that gracious? You actually think He can make something out of your life even though it's a disaster? The overwhelming answer found in the scriptures is yes, God can make good things, incredible things, miraculous things even, out of our brokenness and the difficult experiences that we go through in life. In fact, in Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 27, Paul describes this really broken existence that we live in a broken, fallen world. That we every day see sin face to face, whether it's in our lives or in the people around us, whether it's in the news that's being reported or the difficult circumstances we're going through. This world is not perfect. And so through verses 18 through 27, Paul lays out the struggle that is real. And he says it's not even a struggle just for human beings, that all of creation is groaning because we're looking forward to the time that we can be completely right in God's presence in the heavenly reality. But in the meantime, we're called to action. And Paul writes this very incredible verse in verse 28. He says, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. God can use absolutely anything. Any broken situation, any sin, any darkness, any trial that we've gone through, and use it for His glory, if we will allow Him to do so. It may not be the path that we choose. It may not be to our liking at the time. It may hurt. It may push us to the very brink. But God will not abandon us. And He's calling out to us as sons and daughters of His, for those who are in Jesus Christ. Hey, look over here. I'm doing something incredible and good and new in your life. Love me and follow me and obey me, and I will show you the way. I know in my life, so many of the important lessons that I've learned have come the hard way. Through the long road, through the broken road. And like broken pieces of glass, there are moments and seasons of my life that have been a colossal failure. And yet God, in His faithfulness and love, has continually pressed into my life and used those moments to form my character, to give me endurance to persevere, to give me hope so that I don't give up. And I trust that He does that in every single person's life if only we take the time to notice Him at work. But rarely is this a simple and easy process. We come to God's ways kicking and screaming because we want to do things the way we want to do them. We have this idea in our minds of what is right and good. We prefer not to go through the struggle. And yet, I can say from my own personal experience that the greatest things that God has taught me about himself and about myself, he's taught me in the fire, in the difficult circumstances of life. Will you ponder for a minute and consider in your own life, are you kicking against the ways of God? Is it possible that the winding road that you're on right now is actually the exact path God can use to polish you, to purify you, to make you more like him? God can do things in your life that you can't even comprehend right now, especially if you're in the midst of a struggle. It could be that even in the midst of the turmoil you're experiencing, God is doing something big. And we're not even guaranteed to get out of that struggle. For some of us, we may have chronic illnesses, or have a terminal illness, or be in a relationship that's just not going to change. And yet we testify to God's goodness and his love and his grace when we endure, when we're faithful to him, when we listen to his commands and obey his ways. Just like glass tumbling around in the water, tossed back and forth by the waves, beat against the rocks and polished by the sand and other particles. It takes time, but something beautiful is developed out of that journey. I like to think of it as a kaleidoscope, that our lives are these little pieces of brokenness that are put together after they've been made into a unit, a whole, and that they actually have the image of God stamped on them. Your life is like this kaleidoscope, made up of so many pieces, and yet unified in God's way. It's my prayer that you would know that reality. Honoring God, there's nothing better than it in the entire world. And so, in the end, there are two things that I challenge you to. The first is to reconsider if you believe that you are used goods, that you're no good, that your life's a disaster, and that God can't redeem you. God can make new things out of brokenness in our lives. I hope and pray that you believe that this day, and that maybe this moment is the start for you to do something anew, to believe that God loves you, so that you can actually carry out his purposes for your life. The second thing that I want to challenge you with is to use your life, especially the brokenness from your past, to minister to others. The great author Henry Nouwen wrote a book called The Wounded Healer, and in it he describes that our greatest ministry often comes out of our deepest brokenness in our life. For those who have been through a broken marriage, who better to minister to those who are struggling in their marriage than you? For those who have been through addiction, you have a huge calling in your life to help those who are struggling, if you're at a place where you can do that in a healthy way. For those who have experienced financial troubles, perhaps even declared bankruptcy, if you've figured it out, God can use you to help those who have struggled with the same things. Every single life God is using as we allow Him to help others become a thing of beauty. I challenge you to allow Him to do His work this day in your life. May it be so. God bless you.